Hi, fourth graders. Today we're going to be talking about poetry elements. Those are the unique things that authors or poets, which are the authors of poetry, use when they're creating or writing poetry. Our first element that we're looking at is a verse, one line in a poem. So this would be like a sentence in a poem. So over on the right-hand side over here, we have the poem The Crocodile by Lewis Carroll. How doth the little crocodile improve his shining tail, and pour the waters of the Nile on every golden scale? How cheerfully he seems to grin, how neatly spreads his claw, and welcomes little fishes in with gently smiling jaws. Okay, so in our poem, The Crocodile, we are looking for just one line in a poem. When you're looking just for one line in a poem, you're looking for just one of the lines in this poem. So in this poem, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines total. Okay, just another example of a line. Okay, if you notice that each line does not have punctuation in it, when authors write this, they write it in a structure that each line does not have to have punctuation in it, okay? All right, our next element we are learning about is called a stanza. These are groups of lines and separated by a space, okay? So groups of lines, kind of like a paragraph in the poetry world, as you will. So for example, our first stanza in The Crocodile would be this one right here in orange. This is our stanza 1. Stanza 2 would be right here. It's the group of verses, groups of lines. So in our first stanza, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines or verses. In our second stanza, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 verses or lines. Also, don't forget that space. So important in a stanza. After your first stanza, you must have a space there that's provided to let readers know where the next stanza starts. All right, our next element we are taking a look at, guys, is called rhyme. I think went back into kindergarten when you were starting to look at words. You were rhyming words left and right, okay? So in our crocodile here, we are looking for words that has the same ending sounds. When you are looking for those words, typically those words are at the end of your verse. So the word that you end with will rhyme. We're not necessarily looking for any words that rhyme within our verses, just the ending word in each verse to see if there's any rhyme scheme or rhyming within this poem, okay? So our first example is tail and scale. Our next example is claws and jaws, okay? If you notice, each of the words that rhymed were at the very end of the word. Crocodile, Nile, grin, in. Those all rhyme. It's the last word in each verse could rhyme. So this rhyme scheme would be an A, B, A pattern, okay? Because this sentence is A, this is B, this is A, this is B, this is A, B, A, B. All right, let's look at our next element here. So meter is the patterns of strong and weak syllables in a verse, okay? So thinking of syllables. When I'm thinking of syllables, I use clapping methods to help me get my syllables for each of my words. So for the first verse in The Crocodile, I'm going to clap out each syllable. So thinking of the word how. When I say the word how many syllables does it have in it? How, how, how has one syllable in it, okay? So far I have one. What I do is I usually get a sticky note and I write down my syllables so I can know how many syllables each line has. So far we have one. Doth, one for doth. The, one syllable for the. Little, two syllables for little. Crocodile, ooh, three for crocodile. Okay, so total we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So in our first verse, we had 8 syllables. Let's see if we have 8 syllables in our second verse. Our second verse is improving his shining tail. Okay, here we go. Improve. Ooh, 2 syllables. Start us off. His. one syllable. Shining, shining, two syllables. Tail, one syllable. So for our second verse, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 syllables in that one. So our first line was 8. Our second line was 6. Let's go down and look at our third line in the crocodile and see if it matches our 8 or our 6, okay? So here we go. And that's 1, pour, 2, the, 1, waters, 2, of, 1, the, 1, Nile, 2. Okay, so counting those syllables that we had in that verse was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so we had 8 again. So we're starting to see a pattern here. Let's see if the last line in here has 6 syllables in it. On, 1, every, 2, golden, 2, scale, and 1. So that would be 6 syllables for our verse number 4. So we do have a pattern here. We have 8 syllables for the verse 1. Verse 2 was 6 syllables. Verse 3 was 8 syllables. And verse 4 was 6 syllables. So we do have a meter here. Our meter is 8 syllables, 6 syllables, 8 syllables, 6 syllables. Okay? Our next is rhythm. When you think of rhythm, I want you to think of a beat. So when I am reading the poems, or any type of poem for that matter, there's a beat that it goes to. There's a certain, when you are trying to read it, there's a certain rhythm that we're going to keep when we're reading it, okay? Kind of like if you were hearing a drum beating, okay? And it's the patterns of repeated beats that make the poem sound like music. Did you know that poetry is music? If you looked at music lyrics, they would look just like a poem, like this poem by Lewis Carroll. It's written the same way. They don't have punctuation after every line. It's written in verse. It's written in meters. It's written in stanzas. It has rhythm. It has so many other elements that poetry has in it as well. There's rhyming words, okay? So let's look at this and let's try to figure out our rhythm for the crocodile. So listen as Mrs. Wilhoit reads the crocodile and see if you can find out the rhythm. How doth the little crocodile improve his shining tail, and pour the waters of the Nile on every golden scale? How cheerfully he seems to grin, how neatly spreads his claws, and welcomes little fishes in with gently smiling claws. Could we easily pair this with some type of melody or the piano or an instrument to make this into a song if we wanted to? Yes, we could, for sure, 100%, because there is rhythm to this poem. There's rhythm to all poetry. You just have to find it. That's all we have today, guys, for poetry. Come back and see me next time for some more poetry elements.